So today we'll talk about the application season that just passed, 2026 application season. So we kind of do a review reflection every year this time. As you might know if you're already here, right? So you know the application deadline was Jan 15 and the result came out on March 10th. So by now, April 10 for 15, most students have made the decision to enroll in the school of their choice. So this is a perfect time to review. And if you don't already know me, because sometimes I don't know who's joining, but if you don't already know me, just a quick introduction about myself. I study in the US for high school and college, and I've been working in admission consulting for the past 16 years, specifically mostly in US direction. We do cover a little bit of UK, Switzerland, Canada, whatnot, but I'll say more than 80% of our students are going to the US, and half of that is going to either junior boarding or boarding high schools. We do have a few students also looking for day schools for secondary education. The other half will be university headed students. So, and Sesameed, both me and my partner Daniel, we have been in this field for 16, him 20 years. So we founded Sesameed together, and this is a small education consultancy where we focus on working with students and having a personal experience and getting to know each other. So not sure how you find us, and hopefully we can connect in person as well. So our result for this year. So this year, our batch of high school students submitted 160 uh, applications. So it's not 160 students, 160 applications. Some more, some fewer. And then out of those 160 applications, 46% of them are acceptance. So this, to be honest, is quite high. It's actually one of the highest number we have in the years. But I don't think it reflects the industry landscape, which I will share a little bit later. But we're definitely very happy that the result this year has been terrific for us. And I guess part of that we can attribute to we have a very amazing group of students. And for some of them, we'll discuss in more details, and so that you know what stand out for each of them and why they were successful, and in some cases why they were not successful. So as promised, we're going to talk about the admission landscape. So admission landscape, when so I don't really like bullet points, so that's why I have like data here and there. So it would be important that you listen to what I talk about instead of just looking at the slides, because the slide doesn't tell the whole story. So admission rate 9 to 13%. So this is very competitive, and this is talking about the top 10, top 20 schools. These are the most selected American boarding schools. The admission rate is still very low. For some school, they are single digit, and we quoted the exact example. So chose Rosemary Hall on the right-hand side. They have 3,300 applications. So that is 200 more than last year. As you may know, right, this is a school of high relevance to the international students. And I imagine, although some of the students, I say less than 10% of our students, they are located physically in the US. So some of them will count as domestic applicants. The majority of the students that I work with or Sesame work with are international students. So, Min, you wanna admit? Oh, okay. So, welcome. Good evening. I think I know you. Thank you for joining. We're just talking about Choke Rosemary Hall, which is probably, arguably, I think the most popular choice for international students in recent years, because they have enjoyed a very large network all these years, in the past 30 years, right? Large network of international alums, as well as a very strong regional network. So Choke Rosemary Hall is very popular domestically and internationally. So that's why this year they had one of the lowest admission rate, going into the single digits. So their admission rate for this past season is 9%. And it's especially lower for boarding students. As you can see, right, for day students, since they don't need a bed, so if they want to expand the class slightly a little bit, right, they could do that. But boarding student, they cannot. There's only fixed number of rooms and beds dorm. So they cannot really expand it unless they build a new dorm. So that's why you can see for boarding students is especially low. The admittance rate is 5.8% this year. So and it's similar across all the top 10, top 20 schools. So I'll say in terms of selectivity, this past season has been even more competitive for the highly selective schools. But that's another story for the top 50 schools or beyond. So oh, as you can see, right, a lot of people from the US, they move overseas. A lot of international students, they are less certain about going to the US. I think inflation is point, security is one point, international relationship tension is one point, and most importantly, I think in the past 2 years, the US visa situation, because most international students do require a visa. So some of them, they will say, okay, if I just want boarding school, if I'm not going to get to the top 10, top 20, why bother? So actually right now, I'll say in the past 2, 3 years, it has been a little bit easier for the international students to get into schools beyond the top 20 because those schools, they are seeing a drop in both domestic and international applicants. So they are becoming a little less selective. Okay. And applicant pool. Let's see. Okay. Hi, welcome. Thank you. So we are just getting started. So maybe for your point of view, let me go back a little bit. So just was saying that in Sesame, our success rate was 46% this year because 160 applications and 70 plus of them resulted in admit. And this year, the top 20 schools are still very selective. The admission rate is 9 to 13%, quoting the lowest one, Cho Rosemary Hall, 9%. But top 50 schools is getting easier for international kids. Okay, so now go to applicant pool. So I'm not sure if you are aware or not, but basically for the past 15 years, China has been the biggest international student body, followed by Korean. It used to be Korean being the biggest one, but in the past 15 years, China has overtaken Korean to become the biggest one. In some schools, even like more than half of the international students are Chinese. So that is a slight decline. But as we see, right, the overall international student pool is not actually declined so much because they have the traditional market like your China, right, declining, but it's made up by stable markets. Singapore, Japan, and Korea, those are the places that has always have students applying to US foreign schools and seeing a slight growth. Some actually, because I'm physically in Singapore, some school even seeing a significant growth in Singapore. And Japan has always been like a slow growth in the past few years, and Korean is up and down, pretty stable. But the emerging markets are very interesting. Thailand, India, Nepal. So Thailand, from what we heard from the schools, are the biggest growth they have, especially from Southeast Asia. Used to be student only go if they get a government sponsor scholarship to special pathway programs. But now we see a lot of local Thai families are more willing and ready to go to boarding schools. I think one reason is there have been more international schools in Thailand in the past 10, 20 years. And even local families are more used to going to international schools. And from that, because they've been receiving an international education, they are more open and inclined to go to US boarding schools. And India is very interesting. So similar to Singapore or Malaysia, right? Predominantly people are more used to the British system, so they go to British boarding school more. But because of the recent 5, 10 years, because of the advance in technology, AI, and all that, they feel like a lot of the future of business is in the US. So people has been leaning slightly more towards US education for high school. So, and Nepal is just one of them, and there are a few other names that the schools mentioned to us. But what I want to mention is now, right, it's quite difficult to classify a student, right? So we have family from Bangkok, right? The dad is Thai, the mom is Chinese, right? And the students study in England, right? And then we have, for example, a Chinese student, but the Chinese student have grew up in Italy in the past 6 years. So if you think about 2019, 2020, right? That seems to be very recent for the adults here, but it's actually 6 years ago. So if you can imagine those students that were in primary school during the pandemic and the family relocated during the pandemic, now is like time for them to apply to boarding school. So that's why starting last year and even more so this year, I imagine probably a lot more next year, you have a lot of family that were relocated to different parts of the world, and some of them even relocated multiple times, right? So we have family that moved first to Malaysia, then to Singapore. We had another family first moved to India and then to Dubai, right? So it's difficult to classify, right? So you have mixed parents a lot of times, and then you have the place the child was born is different from the child that the place that they are receiving education, and then they could be receiving an international education, right? Let's say in Thailand, right? Most kids don't go to Thai local schools; they receive British education or American education. So the admission officers are increasingly comfortable and not surprised to navigate all these third cultural applicants and finding interesting way to test them. Oh, actually, I promise I'm gonna tell a joke. I was talking to my colleagues, right? And we were talking to the mission officers, and because it's so difficult to determine which culture they belong to, right? So originally they just look at the school or your first step. Originally they just look at the passport. That was like 10 years ago. And then they realized, okay, people have different passport than where they live. Then they look at the current school. So try to classify the kids because if you have that school transcript, then meaning you belong to that culture, right? And then they realize it's not true. So then they some school, right, to determine whether the student need to take TOEFL. I'm quoting St. Mark's. That's quite famous school, right? Top 30. So many other school, they said if you take internet, you go to international school and you have been studying in English for anywhere between 2 to 4 years, right? You are classified as an international school student and native English speaker, right? But St. Mark doesn't do it that way. They actually give you a very thorough questionnaire. And one of the questions is, what language do you speak at home? So from that point of view, is maybe when you study in school, it's only half of the time, right? But what language you speak with your parents is the other 50%. So, and if you do predominantly speak your native non-English language at home, then that will make you a non-native speaker. But the joke that I was gonna tell this year is and the mission officer was very proud and told us that he invented a new question to tell where the students' true cultural identity is. And the question is, where do you see your dentist? Where is your dentist based in? So apparently, right, a lot of students, if you imagine, right, if they are in Korean, but they study in Boston, but every summer they go back to Korea to see the dentist, or maybe they're from China and now study in Singapore. Every Christmas they go back to China to see the dentist, right? So and then so he was like, that is a very useful question. So just to show you that mission officers and finding new and inventive and interesting ways to understand the cultural background of an applicant. Why is this important, right? Because this is not a day school. We are talking about boarding school admission today. So boarding school admission for them is very important to have a diversity in their culture. So they want to have a diverse student body, a little mix of everything, so that everybody can bring interesting ideas, different perspectives to the classroom and to the student community. So that's why they are sometimes not really they're nitpicking to fit a quota per se, right? But they are trying to understand where everybody come from and what they can bring to the table. Okay. So um, enough of that statistic and trend high level talk, right? So if you are familiar with us and or if you have been looking at boarding school admission, you probably understand in order to evaluate an application, they look at a few things. Layer one, that's the most basic, right? Will be your academics baseline, your grade, your course rigor, and your test scores. Your grade, some people might not understand. Basically, it's the number on your school report, right? So that's your school grade. Whether it's A, B, C, D, or if you go for IB, maximum 8 points or maximum 7 points, or if you go by 100 points. So basically, it's how well you're doing in your current system. Academic rigor, I guess, is a little bit more challenging if you like from a fixed national curriculum. But if you are from a curriculum where you can choose how difficult, higher level or slower course, right, different tracks, then your academic rigor will come into play. And then your test scores will be your TOEFL, your Duolingo, your SSAT, your PSAT, basically things that can measure how good or not good you are, not only compared to kids in your school, but also compared to kids everywhere in the world, right? So that's your academic baseline. Of course, you can have like further academic interests and specialties that we can talk a little bit about later. But this whole thing is just to kind of, no matter you are a new or old friend, we can get you catch up on this framework by using 2 minutes. So layer two is your activity profile. So like your resume beyond the classrooms, right? So basically activity you have breadth and depth versus depth, right? So some people have many activities but not very involved, but versus some people have really strong activities but not so many of them, like they are very niche in one direction. Consistency, how long you've been doing it, level of engagement, how involved you are, right? Sometimes you can be doing it for a long time, but you're not so involved, right? So all these different things are possible dimensions that they can evaluate an element in your application. Layer three is your personal drive. And to be honest, this is the most important. Well, I shouldn't say it's the most important. So the academics is what is a disqualifying factor. I will show you some case studies later, right? So, but basically, if your academic is not up to the school standard, you're not getting in. So it's a denial factor. But the personality is really what get you in, because there are so many students that meet the criteria or conditions layer one and layer two, but they don't get in the end. A lot of them get waitlisted. Why? Because they don't have layer three. It's the personal initiative, your self-management skill, task management, time management, and the ownership in what you're doing. Because after all, it's a boarding school. They want to make sure the student is boarding ready to an extent. Okay, especially for high school. Because sometimes if you're going to junior boarding school, for some the students, they are willing to kind of babysit you a little bit. They understand you are very young. But for high school, starting from grade 8 or grade 9, especially grade 9 or grade 10, they will expect you to be quite sufficient on your own. So hopefully this framework can help you to understand what we are going to discuss later. Okay. If there's one lesson learned this year, I'll say looking at our students, right, the ones that are very successful versus the one that are less so successful, I'll say the biggest conclusion is you should start early. Of course, right? No one is surprised. You in everything you do in life, you should start early. But I'm gonna break down why. If you start a little bit early, although you're fulfilling the same requirement, although you're walking towards the same destination, same goal, right? But the process can feel very different. So much so that even if the same student, if given different amount of time, the result could be very different. Okay, so three types. One type is the one that start very early, 2 to 3 years ahead of their application season. So give us plenty of time to help them build their profile and add more activities and all that. And then that's the other type, second type, where they start kind of inside the application season, anywhere 12 to 18 months before the application deadline. So imagine if you're applying to next season, right? 2027 September entry. And if you are starting 18 months ahead of that, right? Then it will be right now. And if you think about the application deadline, right, is for you to get in next year, the deadline is Jan 2027. So even if you start now, you only have 8 months. That's not a lot of time. So that's why if you're thinking to start your application, do not wait till September and October because the deadline is in Jan. The deadline is not in September. So you don't have all the way up to September to prepare. So please start now. In fact, some of our students already started looking at 2027 and doing the prep. So that is another timeline. And then we also have a few last minute students. The last one we enroll actually was less than 2 weeks before the deadline. It was very challenging. So I'll share more. Okay, so what does earlier head start can give you, right? If you start 2 or 3 years ahead of time, you have. So basically, if you're applying to grade 9, right? Sometimes you have students, you're entering to grade 9, then you're applying in your grade A. So sometimes we have students come to see us in grade 6. So you have 6, 7, A. You know why? Because they that's the number of years of transcript they require for your application, right? So let's say if a student come to see us in grade 7 and the transcript is not wonderful, there's nothing I can do about it, right? Because whatever in the past is the past. So but for some students, if they come early and they understand how the importance of the transcript, right, then they can shape up and pay more attention and the school reports and school comments, right? So that's one. The other thing is, given 2 to 3 years of time, you can really inject new ideas and new activities into the students' life, right? You cannot pick up tennis in 1 day or 2 weeks. But you can if you say, I want to start a new sport. I'm not very sporty. I want to start swimming. I want to start ice hockey. 3 years is a good time. Some students can get to a very good level. We're not saying that everybody should do a sport, but they just that it will be something nice to consider if you have enough time. The other thing is to build your presence in the school because your teacher recommendation letter and your school reports are very important. And it's true that you will only be asking for your current teacher's comments by your when you apply. So let's say in grade 8, grade 9, the year that you apply, the current teacher will be writing your recommendation letters. But sometimes, right, some of our students, because they have been so engaged and involved in different school activities, the teachers actually know them before, and because they are quite trusted in the school community and teachers talk among themselves, right? And say so and so is a good student. So they actually are able to build a lasting impression even before the teacher become their official class teacher. And of course, you have 2 to 3 summers that you can do, right? So, for example, one of our students that applied this year and started with us 2 years ago, we were able to select summer activities for each of his summers and going to different continents, doing different types of activity, some more academic, some more social enterprise, right? So, that's a very good way to boost your resume in an intentional and aligned way. And everybody only have a limited time. You cannot do 10 sports, right? Because you end up being good in none of them. But how do you pick and choose, right? Do you spend more time becoming the soccer team captain, or do you spend more time in getting your grade A in piano? So I think that's very important as well. If your plan is to get into a top boarding school and be successful in a boarding school, right? Then the prep and the time, the way that you make decision to spend your time and energy in the 2 3 years immediately before that is very strategic and important. Okay. Oh, and I do want to give some examples. So when we talk about profile building just now, right, it's more so about the same student in the same system. But sometimes, right, we realize you need to move to a completely different system. So for example, one of our student that got into a top 5 high school, boarding school this year, we actually met her 3 years ago. And she was in a local school, a very traditional uh, local school where they just expect you to study and do nothing and be 100%, actually 200% compliance to school rules and all that. As you can see, right, that is not very compatible with American education. So will not be a very good environment to prepare her to have that kind of activity list and resume to be ready for US high schools, especially if she's aiming to the top. So that's why our advice at that time was to leave the local school. Of course, the family was also ready, right? So that's a big plus to leave the boarding school and the local school and then go to a junior boarding school. And then you can see in one of the case studies, she is so good, right? So she did a lot of wonderful things at the junior boarding school, and then she ended up getting into a top five high school. Another kid, right? So he was from a strong international school. But by the time that we met him was a very social profile. I mean, he does the typical things that students do, right? Because if let's be honest, right? All the family that have the foresight, the knowledge, the plan, and the money and connection to get into a boarding school, they are gonna have more activities, right? Everybody has a few instruments, everybody has traveled overseas for some kind of competitions, everybody plays some kind of sport, right? But the kid was quite average in most of the activities, nothing stand out. So we were able to look at that students and immediately realize like he's not going to be a sports superstar. Um, oh, sorry. It will be okay. Hi, hello.
Hello.
Means, am I still here?
Yes, you are, but half of the screen is gone.
Gone. Okay, sorry.
You can stop
Uh,
sharing and then reshare.
okay. Because I apologize. I don't know why I had an incoming call that's from someone I don't know. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, give me one moment to find that screen. Okay, there we are. And do you remember what I was talking about, Min?
Yes.
What was I talking about?
Let me give you the slide page.
No, I'm here. Uh, right, you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good.
So we're
Okay,
talking
now,
about the second profile, the
okay.
international scope.
Yes, actually we're on number three now. So we're talking about this kid. He's not a sports superstar, and we realized he will never be. While we encourage him to join sports to get active and socialize, that's the biggest win for him. But we know he's not gonna like be varsity sport team, that kind of thing, superstar. But he has leadership potential. He's able and willing to commit to community service and inside the school and outside of school. And some of the projects that he did on his own initiative, actually multiple projects, lasted the whole 2 years that we get to know him, and both online and offline. So that's why really you are able to make a difference. I'm not saying every kid would turn around given 2 3 years, but some examples have repeatedly told us that it's possible. Okay. So basically, if you start early, you have the biggest upside, the strongest repositioning potential, and the least stressful final year. It's still going to be stressful, but to be honest, the student that have been knowing that they're going to boarding school and preparing for that for 3 years, they are much less stressed than the ones that had only 3 weeks, right? So try to make the decision early and act early. And then the typical one, right? That start in the application season, given a few months to a year's time, right? We're still able to give them very structured help, right? Systematic interview training, systematic writing support. Some of them we're able to give them coaching on activity selection, fine-tuning in the last school year, if that's possible, depending on the system and the school they're in, but much less wiggle room, as you can see, much less potential, much less flexibility, but we still are able to do some decent work. And if especially sometimes, right, unknowingly, if the student already come with a lot of activities and already quite prepared, then they just need to kind of understand the activity and connect them together and be able to present it verbally and in writing in an eloquent and impressive way, then that still give us enough time for to work with these students. So, and to be honest, right, we don't have that many students that plan so early ahead. So right here in the middle is the majority of our students that meet us during the application season. And then the ones that are so last minute, right? So for example, this year we have a student that really wanted to apply in January, but so he started thinking about it in Christmas, but everybody has left the school for Christmas break already. So by the time that he's able to schedule his interview, contact the school is was already January. He was lucky he got an offer because his family has gone through this before with an older sibling. So they were not planning for this younger sibling to apply, but at the end he decided last minute to apply. So he was lucky because his family was experienced. So although and he has witnessed how the older sibling done it before. So and of course he was a wonderful student, but that puts the whole family and himself into tremendous stress, right? So all of the things that he submitted were submitted in literally the last hour. So the mom have to stay up all night to help him press the button and all that, right? So highly not recommended. And of course he's lucky because he has really nice teachers. The teachers were willing to help him write recommendation letters in last minute notice. Okay, so yes, that happened. But I mean, if he had more time, maybe he could gotten even more offers. So he did get pretty good offers, but not many. Okay. So um, just to recap, in the most important lesson learned in terms of timeline is not just more time, it's less complex compressed. Because everybody need to fulfill the same application requirements. If you do it in a short amount of time, it's just very stressful for you. And if you can do it in longer amount of time, not only is less stressful, but also you can pick and choose your timing wisely. And you make this into a natural learning process. As much as we want to help kids to develop and grow and be more mature and independent, not only in writing, but as well in mindset. But if we only have 2 weeks, that's not so much, right? Because we are just focused on the essay. But if we have more time with the students, we are able to let them know what boarding schools are looking for, what to prepare mentally, and how to deal with different kind of situation, both in his current school or her current school or in the future school. So just overall, it's a lot more wholesome experience. Okay. Yay, case study. I think usually that's what people are looking for when they come to seminar like this. So and after this we're almost done because supposedly we do 40 minutes, but I know I probably will go over time a little bit and it works out fine because people come a little bit later today as well. So case study. So first I have four case studies for the top 10 schools. So and then you have the schools that the student eventually admitted matriculated to, and then you have the number of offers they get. And then I give them a rough score in terms of the academic level, the sports level, the arts, and the leadership and the impact. So, I mean, different schools, in terms of boarding school, they do it differently. Some score them 1 to 5, some score them 1 to 10, right? Some score them 1 to 100. So inside the admission officer, the admission officers, they do it differently, each school. And then they have different categories, but more or less it's a very similar category like this. So I without needing to go over every single one, I think a few message I want to bring out. If you see, right, all of them has at least 110. I can fast forward to the next slide. The next slide is kids that go into top 30 schools. There's no 10. Okay, but the top 10 school kids, all of them at least have 110. So if you remember, we talk about activities, right? It's breadth versus depth. So depth is very important, and 10 is the highest score already in my grading system. So what does a 10 look like, right? So I think the sport, these two, right? So the two kids, one going to Andover, one going to Hotchkiss, both are top 10 school. These two kids, they are definitely been playing their core sport. One is soccer, one is tennis for multiple years, probably for as long as they could remember themselves since a little child, being a little kid. And they have been working with professional coaches. Most of them play for both the school team and the club team because a lot of times the school team themselves are not competitive enough. So for serious sport students, they play for clubs as well, and they have gone to international tournaments, so they're not just competing at the school level or city level, they compete internationally as well. And they have a serious potential of getting into the high school's varsity team. And they also have a serious potential to um, to be an athlete in university. Okay, so that sounds like a lot, right? Doesn't mean that they're Olympian, okay? So what I'm saying is a 10 for sports, for high school application, is you have a serious potential to get into the high school's varsity team. Doesn't mean that you are the top player, right? Maybe there are 10 in the varsity team, 20 kids in the varsity team. You're able to get in. And not we're not even talking about getting in grade 9. Maybe you have the potential to get in grade 10, grade 11. So basically, the coach will look at your age, how you're playing, right? Review your video or portfolio and see how much potential you have. And when we say potentially play sport in college, it doesn't have to be Division One sports. It could be Division Two, Division Three. Not sure how familiar you are with the US sports system. So basically, you don't have to be national level, right? If Division Three, right, your focus is still academics versus it's just that you spend 20 hours training each week. Okay, so not Olympian level. A lot of kids can reach this level if they have devoted long time training and competing. Okay, so all these kids, although these two kids at least, they have 10 in sports, meeting the criteria that I described just now, that doesn't make them Olympians. Okay, so don't be so surprised. And art. Um, Now, although this student, the other student that got into Andover, has an art in 10 in art, she plays a very unusual instrument. It's a folk instrument. It's like a guitar, but a folk instrument version of it. But she plays it extremely well in the sense that she's top in the country or top field for her age in the country. And and in a sense that even you don't know the instrument, like just looking at the speed that her finger moves and the whole aura, right? When she played the instrument, you can see things are serious. And she was able to connect this with her charity work. She was able to connect this with her school art performances and all that. So again, it's not only about that hobby, right? It's also what you can impact the community with it. And I want to talk about the Hotchkiss kid. He got 15 offers. He almost got an offer from every single school that he applied to. Of course, he applied to quite a bit of schools, but and you can see he has 7. So the other message I want to bring out is you don't need to be perfect, right? You have a 10 somewhere, you have a 7 somewhere. If you have a 5 somewhere, right, not passing grade, then that's not good, right? So you need to be quite balanced, but you can definitely have a stronger link and weaker link. And this kid happened to have a weaker academic profile. And when I say weaker, right? Okay, let me qualify. What is a 10? A 10 in academics is straight A student with minimal effort, super academic start, right? A 9 is you get good grades, but maybe it's not like super natural for you. You still have to work hard for it. Grade A is like mostly okay grades. Maybe you have like A minus, maybe 1 B plus somewhere, right? But mostly A's. 7, right? 7 is like if you follow the IB system, you have like 4, 5, 6. And if you have A, B, C, D, then maybe you have B or even one C, right? Although you still have some A's. So we were really worried about him. We're like, oh no, right? So this kid is wonderful everywhere else, but the academic was a little bit. But there's always a holistic process. So that's the beauty of the American system. Although his school report is not the most wonderful, but we were able to make sense of it. And he was able to make sense of it. First, because of sports. So a lot of his grade is not because of exams, because he doesn't understand. It's because he was literally skipping too many school days for his international sports competition. So that is something that makes sense, right? The other thing is you can see that he tried to make up those classes, and you can see from the teacher recommendations. Because most of the time, if your grade is not good, the teacher comments are not good, right? But for this student, although the grade is not perfect because of the missing school days, but the teacher recommendations are wonderful. So clearly, this is a motivated, driven, and smart student, has a lot of potential, but didn't have the best time management at that time, right? And because this student, and I give him a 10 in the impact. Why? So the impact is difficult thing to understand. Basically, it's your sphere of influence, right? So naturally, if you have a lot of leadership experience, then you have more impact usually, right? But some people like the leadership just a title, they don't do a whole lot. But most of the time, if you have more leadership or you have a lot of community work, then you have impact. But this guy, like he has impact across the board. So sports, of course, he's a captain. He's a captain of multiple teams actually. So art, even though he's not a wonderful artist himself, but he has a lot of community projects related to art because he's from an arts family. And leadership, um, because he's in sports leadership as well as the community project leadership, so he has a very strong background. And he's also, you can see that he arranged all the siblings as well. So he's like leadership in multiple all areas. And most importantly is he can make an impression very fast. So this is one of the very few students that we have where the admission officer, after interviewing, love him, but also the other people that he bumped into, the teachers, the other admission officers that didn't interview him, but maybe had a 2 minute handshake with him, was also very impressed. So for someone to be able to kind of like, do impress people so fast, right? Such a young student, that's very impressive. So that's why, like, to be honest, this kid is the single student that we have been able to successfully get admitted into a top 10 school without a straight A report card, right? So it's very, very rare, but he makes up for himself in other ways. Okay, so yeah, so that's why I thought this would be more meaningful than just telling you one student so that you can see and compare. Of course, not everybody is going into top 10 schools, and top 20, top 30 schools are perfectly wonderful, great schools. And to be honest, all of the schools, I cannot say so absolute, but I'll say by most metrics and matriculation or uh, student quality, peer influence or whatever, right? Teacher quality. All of the schools are still stronger than the majority of international school options here in Asia. So still worth the time to get into. And also, if the kid is not super independent, super mature, right? Getting in the top 10 school is very brutal. The difficult part is not getting in. The difficult part is surviving and be successful, right? So top 20, top 30 school are perfectly wonderful schools. Okay, so I want to share with you some case studies because we're running a little bit out of time. So now you see some students get into six category, right? That they're still okay, but like really getting a little minimal, right? So I'll say a six in art or a six in sports is like, okay, you join your school PE lesson. We have one or two personal coaching, but nothing impressive, right? And arts, especially in arts, maybe you do the school arts program, you have a certain experience, you can catch up, but you don't have anything stand out as an artist, right? So that kind of thing. So you can see, right? Basically in top 30 school category, some kids they can have like some area in six, meaning they could do it, they have potential to do it, but they have not done whole lot of it. So it's pretty a blank sheet of paper in those areas. But you can see they still have some nines. They don't have tens now, but they have some nines. So especially the first kid, I was arguably the first kid because he has to have scholarship. So unfortunately, because the family will need financial support and quite a lot of it. So although this student was very good, he has to kind of downgrade himself and go to a top 20 school. But if this was a full pay student, I am quite confident that, and he come actually a little bit late. If this was a full pay student and he has started maybe a few months earlier or a year earlier in the process, then he has very good potential to go to a top 10 school. So that's why sometimes it's not just the student, right? Sometimes it's also family planning, financial resources, and can see the other students, that's why you can see it's still competitive. The top 20, top 30 schools still competitive. If you have clear areas of issue, red flag, you're probably still not going to get into a top 20, 30 school. But if you are a good student with good attitude, good personality, positive and willing to learn and develop, then you have a chance. Okay. So just wrapping up, the same student doesn't always have the same outcome. In fact, right, there are two students in those two categories just now, right? They started similarly in similar time. Both of them, I'm not going to pinpoint which one, but both of them went to a junior boarding school. But one student was able to have a lot more leadership exposure, a lot more participation in the community. The other student, a little bit, but less so, right? So for example, two students, we will both ask them to run for student union or student council positions. Some will be successful, some will be not successful. So we, as consultants, we do our best to advise and suggest. But some students will decide not to run at all. Some students will run and not successful. But this first kid, she ran and she was very successful. And not only that, and she also was the most active student council member in her school. And at her age, to be able to manage all those extra responsibilities and maintain her grade and still do sports and all that, right? That shows her maturity. So same student doesn't mean the same outcome. Even same consultant doesn't mean the same outcome. So it's a joint project that we do our best, the student do their best, and sometimes you need a little bit of luck. So strategy is important, especially if you're starting early. It's not only about effort. Strategy, doing it the smart way and strategic way is very important. And time is the most important ingredient. So if you don't take away anything in today's talk, time, start early. All right. So just to recap, we can do early planning 2 to 3 years ahead of time. We actually have students that start last week we did a seminar. It was a university seminar in KL. And the youngest family, because the parents just look my age. I'm like, you can't have students applying to university. They were like, yeah, my kid is only, the oldest one is in second grade, the youngest one is still in preschool. So parents apparently they plan ahead very early. Um, so we do school selection, positioning, we do interview training, and then we do essay coaching and narrative guidance and all that. So all the typical things. So again, thank you for joining the seminar today. Hopefully, I have shared something useful. But again, nothing can replace having a personal consultation because all those case study might not fit your case, your students' profile exactly. Every family have their unique expectations. Every family have their unique considerations, right? So feel free to book a 30-minute consultation. Sometimes it goes longer, 40 minutes or 45, 50 minutes, depending on where the discussion leads us. But we do offer free personal consultations so that you will know whether this is feasible for you, whether this is the right path for your child and your family, and you know how to build a clear path forward. Okay. So feel free to check out us on our website, our WhatsApp, So hopefully we can meet you. Any questions? Everybody has been the chat has been silent, so I will assume we don't have questions, but I'll hang out here for maybe a little minute or two in case you want to type something. Otherwise, I wish you a wonderful evening, weekend upcoming, and wonderful summer. If you are not joining my seminar next month, then I wish you a wonderful summer ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.